Robert was a wealthy businessman who had traveled the world many times. But there was something different about this small town he arrived in on a chilly autumn evening. The streets were narrow, lined with old brick houses and faint lanterns flickering in the distance. The town seemed quiet, almost too quiet, but there was an air of mystery that made him curious. Robert had come to acquire a private collection of antiques and rare artifacts, some of which had belonged to ancient families that no longer lived in the town. He had always been fascinated by history, especially items that carried stories from the past, and this crypt was said to be one of the oldest and most mysterious places in the area. As he walked down the cobblestone streets, Robert noticed the people seemed to avoid looking directly at him. Their eyes would follow him for a moment, and then quickly turn away. He felt a shiver run down his spine, but he brushed it off as excitement mixed with the chill in the air. Eventually, he reached the outskirts of the town, where the crypt stood on a hill surrounded by overgrown grass and twisted trees. The building was made of gray stone, dark and worn with age, and a sense of stillness surrounded it, as if the world itself had decided to give this place a wide berth. Robert felt a strange mix of awe and unease as he looked at the entrance. The heavy iron doors were closed, covered in rust, but they seemed to hold secrets within. The caretaker of the crypt, an old man with a stooped back and eyes that seemed to have seen centuries pass, appeared from the shadows. "Sir," he said in a low, cautious voice, "I must warn you. This place is not like the others. Strange things have happened here, and many who have stayed too long have regretted it." Robert smiled politely, not used to people taking him seriously. "I have traveled all over the world, old man," he replied. "I have seen the ruins of palaces, tombs, and castles. I have nothing to fear." The caretaker shook his head slowly. "You may think so, but some things cannot be understood until they reveal themselves. Listen carefully tonight, for the crypt has its own ways of speaking." Robert laughed lightly, thinking it was just local superstition, but deep down, he felt a tiny knot of curiosity. The caretaker led Robert to a small room adjacent to the crypt, where he would spend the night. The room was sparse, with only a wooden table, a chair, and a single candle burning dimly. The walls were cold, covered with moss, and the air smelled of damp earth and old stone. Robert could hear faint whispers from the crypt itself, almost like the wind, but sharper, as if someone, or something, was moving inside. He tried to ignore it and set his belongings down, but the groan came again, soft at first. Almost a sigh carried through the walls. It was human in tone, yet strange, hollow, and filled with sorrow. Robert froze, unsure if he had imagined it. Curiosity overcame fear, and he decided to step outside. The night was silent except for the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. He approached the massive doors of the crypt, and with some effort, pushed one slightly open, revealing darkness inside. A cold breeze escaped from the opening, carrying with it the faint groaning sound. Robert's heart began to race, but he felt drawn to the noise. The caretaker's warning echoed in his mind, but the allure of discovering the truth was stronger. He took a deep breath and stepped closer, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. The darkness seemed alive, almost breathing, and with each step, the groan became clearer, closer, more urgent. Robert examined the exterior of the crypt, noticing carvings and symbols that were centuries old. Some looked like faces frozen in pain, while others were geometric patterns that seemed to move when he stared at them for too long. He wondered about the people who had built this place and what had happened here. The groans sounded again, this time more distinct, like a cry for help trapped beneath the earth. Robert felt an unfamiliar fear, but also excitement. For the first time in his life, he realized that he was standing on the edge of something beyond ordinary understanding, something that could change the way he saw the world. He decided to spend the night near the crypt, observing and listening, eager to discover the secrets that had remained buried for centuries. As the candle flickered in his small room, Robert could not stop thinking about the sound from the crypt. He tried to sleep, but found himself waking every few minutes, the groan lingering in his mind. It was not just a sound. It was a message, a warning, or perhaps a call for help. He wondered what lay beneath the stone floors, hidden in darkness for so long. One thing was certain. This night would not be like any other, and the event about to unfold would change Robert forever. The mysterious Crypt had claimed his attention, and he could not look away. The night grew darker, and a cold wind swept across the hill where the crypt stood. Robert had chosen to stay near the heavy stone doors, refusing the small room offered by the caretaker. He wanted to be closer to the source of the strange groaning he had heard earlier. Each sound seemed to echo in the silence, bouncing off the walls of the crypt, sending chills down his spine. But along with the fear, there was a strong sense of curiosity, a feeling that something incredible was about to happen. As he sat on a small stone bench, Robert noticed shadows flickering at the edge of his vision. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then he saw a dark figure moving inside the crypt. It did not walk like a human. It seemed to glide, almost floating across the stone floor. The groaning grew louder and more distinct, filling the air with a strange rhythm, like someone trapped, calling out for help. Yet unable to speak properly, Robert's heart raced. His palms grew sweaty, but he could not turn away. He had always been drawn to mysteries, and this was unlike anything he had ever seen. He took a cautious step forward, his shoes crunching on the gravel. The sound seemed to alert the figure inside, and it paused, as if noticing him for the first time. Robert held his breath, waiting, his mind racing with questions. What was this creature? Why was it in the crypt? And how had it survived for so long beneath the earth? The cold air around him seemed to thicken, and every instinct in his body screamed at him to step back. But curiosity pushed him onward, stronger than fear. Robert decided to open the heavy iron doors just a little more, enough to peek inside without fully entering. The darkness was almost complete, but he could make out shapes moving slowly. The shadows shifted in a way that suggested intelligence, not random motion. Then he saw it clearly, a small, hunched figure covered in dirt, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The groaning came directly from it, a low, desperate sound. Robert felt a wave of sympathy mixed with fear. This was no ordinary animal or artifact. It was alive, and it had been trapped for years, perhaps decades, in the cold darkness of the crypt. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the open door, carrying the smell of damp earth and decay. The small figure shivered, and the groaning turned into a sharp cry, as if it were warning him or pleading for help. Robert froze, unsure whether to run or move closer. He thought of the caretaker's words again. The crypt has its own ways of speaking, and realized that this was exactly what the old man had meant. The crypt was alive in its own way, guarding something that had been hidden for centuries, something that wanted to be discovered, but only by the brave or the foolish. Gathering courage, Robert slowly stepped into the entrance of the crypt, the air growing colder with each step. His breath formed clouds in front of him, and the faint glow from the figure illuminated the ancient carvings on the walls. Faces frozen in pain, twisted symbols, and mysterious shapes stared at him as if watching his every move. The groaning grew louder, almost urgent, and Robert felt a strange connection with the being, as if it was communicating fear and hope at the same time. He extended a hand slightly, unsure if it was the right thing to do. The figure hesitated for a moment, then moved closer to him. Its movements were careful, almost cautious, but there was a sense of trust beginning to form. Robert realized that this creature was not dangerous. It was frightened and confused, trapped in the darkness for so long. It did not know the world outside. He felt a rush of responsibility, a sudden understanding that he could not leave it here, alone and buried under centuries of stone. As the night wore on, the groaning continued, but now it had a rhythm that Robert could follow. He listened carefully, realizing that the sound seemed to guide him, leading him deeper into the mysteries of the crypt. Each step he took was filled with tension, each breath mingled with fear and excitement. He understood that the events of this night would stay with him forever. The crypt was no longer just an ancient building. It had become a doorway to something extraordinary, something alive, waiting for him to uncover it. By the time the first hints of dawn touched the sky, Robert was still standing at the entrance, eyes fixed on the small, glowing figure. The night had changed him. Awakened to curiosity and courage he had never known. He had entered the crypt expecting a story, perhaps an artifact, but he had found life, mystery, and a secret that would challenge everything he believed about the world. The groaning had led him here, and he knew this was only the beginning. Robert could not sleep that morning. Even as the first pale light of dawn crept across the crypt's hill, his mind replayed the night over and over. The strange groaning, the small glowing figure, the feeling that the crypt itself was alive. He felt drawn back to the entrance, a magnetic pull he could not resist. He had to know more, to see what lay beneath the stone floors that had hidden secrets for centuries. The caretaker had left him with a warning the night before, but Robert felt a mixture of fear and determination. He remembered the old man's words. The crypt has its own ways of speaking, and now he understood them in a way that sent a shiver down his spine. Robert scanned the walls carefully, looking for any clue about the strange figure, and then he noticed something unusual. A section of the floor near the back of the crypt was slightly raised, as if it had been disturbed recently. It was covered in dirt and moss, blending almost perfectly with the surroundings, but his eyes caught a faint outline of a stone hatch. Kneeling down, Robert brushed away layers of dirt and debris, revealing a square stone slab with strange carvings on its edges. He traced the carvings with his fingers, feeling the grooves worn smooth by time. Each symbol seemed to pulse under his touch, and the groaning he had heard earlier seemed louder, coming from directly beneath the hatch. Robert's heart pounded. His mind raced with questions, yet a strong sense of purpose pushed him forward. He knew he had found something extraordinary, something that had been hidden for generations. With great effort, he lifted the stone slab, and beneath it lay a narrow, dark passage, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. A cold, musty smell rose from the darkness, carrying hints of damp earth and something else he could not identify. The groaning echoed louder from below, now more urgent and almost pleading. Robert hesitated for a moment, feeling the chill run down his spine, but he could not turn back. He had come this far, and he felt an unexplainable connection to whatever lay hidden beneath the earth. He descended carefully into the passage, feeling the uneven stones under his hands and feet. The air grew colder, thicker, as if the crypt itself was holding its breath. Shadows danced along the walls, created by the faint light that seemed to glow from the small figure following him. The groaning continued, guiding him deeper, and Robert realized that this sound was more than noise. It was communication, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. The passage twisted and turned, narrow at first, then gradually opening into a wider chamber. The walls here were covered with ancient murals depicting scenes of people and strange creatures. Some looked human, others something entirely different. Their eyes seemed to follow Robert as he moved, and he felt as if the crypt was observing him. He knelt to examine the murals, realizing that they told a story of guardians, of beings trapped for centuries to protect something valuable, something alive. The small glowing figure moved ahead, stopping near a pile of loose stones. It seemed to want Robert to notice something, and as he approached, he discovered a partially buried coffin, its surface cracked and covered with dirt. The groaning came directly from it now, louder, more desperate, almost like the coffin itself was alive, resisting disturbance yet begging to be opened. Robert's pulse raced, fear and excitement fighting inside him. He realized that whatever lay within this coffin was not just an artifact. It was a living being, something the world had forgotten, hidden away for centuries. He paused, his hands hovering above the cracked lid, wondering what he was about to uncover. The air was thick with tension, and the silence of the chamber was broken only by the persistent groaning. Robert felt a mixture of dread and anticipation, knowing that the moment he lifted the lid, his life, and everything he believed, would change forever. The crypt had led him here for a reason, and he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, waiting to reveal its secret at last. Robert's hands trembled slightly as they hovered over the cracked lid of the coffin. The groaning had grown louder, sharper, more urgent, as if the being inside was aware of his presence. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart, and slowly pushed the lid upward. The old wood creaked and splintered under his effort, sending small clouds of dust into the cold, stale air. Inside, Robert was not prepared for what he saw. It was not the skeleton he had expected, nor the lifeless remains of some ancient person. Instead, there was a small, hunched figure, almost entirely covered in centuries of dirt and soil. Its skin was pale and strangely translucent, and faint, glowing lines ran across its body like veins of light. The figure was alive, breathing shallowly, groaning softly, yet urgently, as if begging for freedom. Robert froze, unable to move at first. A mixture of fear, awe, and fascination washed over him. He had never seen anything like this in his life, not in his travels, not in the rare artifacts he had collected, not even in the stories of ancient civilizations. This was something completely otherworldly, trapped beneath the earth for centuries, yet somehow surviving, somehow aware, and somehow waiting for him. The small figure stirred, raising a tiny hand. Its glowing eyes met Robert's, and he felt a shiver run through him. The eyes were intelligent, filled with fear, but also recognition. Almost as if it had known he would come, Robert stepped closer, unsure whether it was safe, but the groaning had changed, becoming a rhythm that seemed to communicate, a pattern that drew him in. He realized that the being was not dangerous. It was frightened and confused, trapped in darkness for far too long. Carefully, Robert reached down, brushing away the thick layer of dirt covering the figure. Each movement revealed more of its body, pale and delicate, yet strong in some strange, unearthly way. The glow along its skin grew brighter as he cleaned it, almost as if it was responding to his touch. The groaning now sounded less like a cry for help and more like a greeting, a cautious acknowledgement of his presence. Robert could hardly believe his eyes, his mind racing with questions. How had this creature survived for centuries? What was it? And why was it here, buried in a crypt no one dared to enter? Each thought collided with another, making his head spin. Yet despite the fear, there was a sense of wonder that kept him rooted in place. He knew he was witnessing something extraordinary, something that defied the ordinary laws of life and history. The figure slowly rose, its small frame wobbling as it adjusted to being upright. It looked at Robert, its eyes glowing faintly, and let out a low, almost melodic sound. The groaning had turned into a song of sorts, haunting and beautiful, filling the crypt with an energy Robert could feel in his chest. He instinctively reached out a hand, and the being responded, stepping closer, brushing against him, fragile but alive, aware and intelligent. Robert realized that he could not leave it here, trapped and alone. The creature had been waiting for someone to find it, someone who could understand, someone brave enough to face the unknown. He felt a responsibility he had never known before, a sudden connection with this mysterious being. He needed to help it, to bring it out of the crypt, into the sunlight it had never seen. The thought sent another shiver through him. But he also felt excitement, a sense that the night's mysteries were only beginning. As Robert carefully lifted the figure from the coffin, the glow along its skin brightened, illuminating the murals on the walls. The ancient images seemed to come alive in the light. Faces frozen in stone, now shining, as if acknowledging the release of the being. He felt a strange mix of fear, awe, and hope, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. The creature was alive, intelligent, and now in his hands. And the crypt had revealed just a small part of its secret. As Robert held the creature in his arms, he felt its tiny body tremble. The glow along its skin pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and the groaning that had filled the crypt turned into faint, melodic murmurs. It was alive, aware, and somehow intelligent. He could sense its fear, but also a quiet trust, as if it knew he meant no harm. Robert's heart pounded in his chest, part fear, part awe, and part excitement. This was unlike anything he had ever encountered, and the reality of the situation pressed on him like a heavy weight. He took a cautious step back, trying to get a better look. The creature's glowing eyes followed him, intelligent and curious, studying him as if trying to understand who he was. Robert noticed the carvings on the walls again, And for the first time, he saw the story they told in a new way. Faces frozen in stone, twisted in fear or protection, seemed to echo the presence of this being. The crypt had not only trapped it, but had been built to protect it, to hide it from the world. Robert realized that he was not just holding a creature, he was holding a secret of history, a life preserved through time, waiting for someone to find it. Suddenly, the creature shivered and let out a more urgent sound. Almost a warning. Robert turned toward the shadows, and his eyes caught movement along the far wall. Dark shapes began to shift, forming into forms that were unlike anything he had seen. Their outlines were humanoid, but distorted, unnatural, and they seemed drawn to the creature. He felt a chill run through him. The crypt was alive in ways he could barely understand. And now others had awakened. Entities bound to the crypt's secret, and Robert had disturbed them. The small figure in his arms pressed closer, as if sensing the danger, and the glowing lines along its skin flared, casting a pale light that pushed back the darkness. Robert understood instinctively that the being was more than just alive. It had power, a protective energy that could repel the shadows. The groaning had shifted into a low hum, vibrating through the walls, the floor, and into his bones, giving him courage and fear at the same time. He stepped forward, holding the creature tightly, ready to face whatever came from the darkness. The shadows retreated slightly as he moved, as if recognizing the creature's authority. Robert's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. The crypt was not just a tomb or a hiding place. It was a sanctuary, a prison, and now a stage for something extraordinary. He could feel the history of the place pressing down on him, centuries of mystery and silence finally breaking open. And the small being in his arms seemed to guide him, moving with a purpose, almost urging him to leave the room, to step into the light. Robert slowly made his way toward the exit of the crypt, each step heavy with tension. The shadows watched, but did not follow, almost respecting the creature's presence. The air grew warmer as he approached the stone doors, and the first rays of sunlight filtered through the cracks above, illuminating dust particles floating in the air. The small figure stirred, stretching its tiny arms as if awakening fully to the world for the first time. Robert could feel the energy of life flowing from it, a radiant warmth that filled the dark corners of the crypt. As they stepped into the open air, Robert felt the weight of fear lift slightly. The world outside seemed ordinary, yet he knew it had changed. And so had he. The creature's glow dimmed gently in the sunlight, settling into a soft, steady light, and it looked up at him, almost smiling, or at least giving the sense of gratitude and relief. Robert, pale and shaking, finally understood the truth. He had discovered something alive, something extraordinary, something that the earth had kept hidden. For centuries, the crypt had given him a secret no one else would ever believe, and the groaning that had started this night-long adventure had finally led him to the revelation he would never forget. The morning sun spilled over the hill, but Robert barely noticed. His mind was still racing from the events inside the crypt. The small, glowing creature in his arms now seemed calmer. Yet there was a tension in its tiny body that made him uneasy. He understood that leaving it outside the crypt was just the beginning of a challenge, not the end. The being had survived centuries underground, but the world above was completely unknown, and Robert knew he had to act carefully. He set the creature down gently on the soft grass, watching as it explored its surroundings. Its movements were cautious but graceful, each step calculated, as if it was testing the new world it had entered. Robert knelt beside it, unsure of what to do next. The creature's eyes met his, glowing faintly in the sunlight, and he felt an unspoken plea, a silent question about trust, protection, and guidance. He realized that he was now responsible for its survival, and the weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on him. Suddenly, Robert heard a rustling sound from the trees nearby, a movement that did not belong to the wind or the birds. His heart leapt into his throat as shadows flickered along the branches. Moving closer, he instinctively stepped between the creature and the approaching shapes. His mind raced. Were these people? Animals? or something else drawn by the crypt's ancient secrets. The small being in front of him shivered and let out a low, urgent hum, as if warning him of danger. Robert understood instinctively that these shadows were not friendly, and that they could threaten the creature if he was not careful. He picked up the glowing being again, holding it close, feeling the warmth radiate against his chest. He knew he had to get it to safety, away from the prying eyes and unseen dangers that might lurk near the crypt. The world above ground was full of uncertainty, but staying near the crypt was far riskier. The creature seemed to sense his decision and relax slightly. Trusting him to lead, Robert began walking down the hill, careful not to make sudden movements, aware that every sound could attract unwanted attention. As he moved through the forest path leading away from the crypt, he thought about the magnitude of what he had discovered. Centuries of life hidden beneath stone, protected and trapped, and now freed. Yet freedom came with responsibility, and Robert knew he had to guide this being into a world that might not understand it. The groaning he had heard in the crypt had long since stopped, replaced by soft, rhythmic humming that seemed almost comforting now. The creature's glow pulsed gently with each step, lighting his path through the dim forest. Hours passed as Robert carefully navigated the dense trees. Avoiding roads and villages, the sunlight began to fade, casting long shadows across the forest floor, and Robert realized the challenge of keeping the creature safe in a world so full of danger. He wondered how he could find a place where it would not be threatened, where it could survive and perhaps even thrive. His mind raced through every option, every possibility, each more complicated than the last. By the time night fell again, Robert had reached a secluded clearing far from the crypt, a place hidden from human eyes. He knelt on the ground, letting the creature explore its new surroundings. Its glow lit up the small area, and he could see curiosity and wonder in its eyes. He knew this was only a temporary refuge, but it was a start, a place where he could plan the next steps for the creature's safety. For the first time, Robert felt a calm determination, a sense of purpose that went beyond fear or fascination. He understood that the journey was not over, and that the bond between him and the creature would guide both of them through the challenges ahead. As he sat there under the stars, the small being nestled against him, humming softly, Robert realized that he had not only discovered a mysterious life hidden beneath the earth, but he had also found courage, empathy, and an unexpected connection that would change both their lives forever. The crypt had released its secret into the world, and now Robert was the guardian of that secret, responsible for keeping alive, safe, and free. The night in the secluded clearing was quiet, yet alive with tension. Robert sat on a fallen log, watching the small glowing creature move cautiously through the soft grass. Its eyes flickered with curiosity, and its glowing veins pulsed brighter with every step. Robert noticed subtle changes in its body, its frame stretching slightly, its skin shimmering more vividly in the moonlight. It was beginning to transform, and the sight filled him with awe and a hint of fear. He leaned closer, studying it carefully, and realized that the creature's form was becoming more human. Its limbs lengthening, fingers delicate but strong. Its face, still faintly alien, now showed familiar features. Eyes, nose, and lips that could belong to a human child. Yet there was something otherworldly about it, a sense of timeless wisdom that made Robert's chest tighten with wonder. The humming it had made earlier now rose in tone, a melodic sound that resonated in the clearing, almost like a song of freedom, and Robert could feel it vibrating through the ground beneath him. The transformation continued, and the creature took its first full step toward him, standing taller now, its glowing skin dimming slightly in the soft moonlight. Its eyes locked with Robert's, and for a moment, he felt as if he could see into its mind, understanding its thoughts, its memories, the centuries it had spent trapped beneath the crypt, and the relief at finally being free. A rush of emotions overwhelmed him. Fear, awe, excitement, and a deep, protective instinct that he could not explain. Suddenly, the creature raised its hands, and the air around them seemed to shift, a subtle energy pulsing outward, brushing against the trees and leaves, making the clearing feel alive. Robert felt a warmth spread through him, unlike anything he had experienced before, and he understood instinctively that this being was not only alive but extraordinary, perhaps the last of its kind, a guardian of something ancient and sacred. Its presence was commanding, yet gentle, and he felt humbled, realizing that he was witnessing a secret of the world few could ever imagine. As the transformation completed, the creature looked fully human, yet its aura remained unmistakably otherworldly. Its glowing veins had faded into faint traces of light along its skin, and its posture was regal, yet approachable. The groaning from the crypt was now gone, replaced by a soft silence, as if the earth itself had paused to observe this moment. Robert stepped closer, and the being extended a hand toward him, a gesture of trust and gratitude. His own hand trembled as he accepted it, and the connection was immediate, a bond formed in fear, wonder, and shared understanding. In the distance, the shadows of the crypt seemed to stir slightly, as if acknowledging the creature's emergence. Robert realized that it had not only escaped its confinement, but had also fulfilled some ancient purpose, stepping into a world that it had been waiting to see, and he had been the one to guide it there. The experience left him pale, heart racing, and mind spinning with questions about life, history, and the hidden mysteries of the earth. He knew that the crypt had chosen him for this moment, and the being had trusted him in return, creating a connection that would last a lifetime. As the night deepened, Robert and the creature stood together in the clearing, gazing at the moon and stars above. The creature spoke, not in words, but in images and emotions, showing him glimpses of its long confinement, the guardians who had once protected it, and the purpose it held in the world above. Robert listened intently, feeling both the weight of history and the gift of revelation. The groaning that had started this journey was now replaced with harmony, a sense of peace, and the promise of a future yet to unfold. Robert realized that his life had changed forever. He had come seeking artifacts, stories, and curiosities, but he had found something far greater, a living secret, a being of mystery and light, and a lesson about courage, empathy, and the unknown wonders hidden beneath the world. The moonlight touched the creature's face, now fully transformed, and Robert, pale with awe, understood that some secrets of the past are alive, and some discoveries demand respect, reverence, and protection. The night in the secluded clearing was quiet, yet alive with tension. Robert sat on a fallen log, watching the small, glowing creature move cautiously through the soft grass. Its eyes flickered with curiosity, and its glowing veins pulsed brighter with every step. Robert noticed subtle changes in its body, its frame stretching slightly, its skin shimmering more vividly in the moonlight. It was beginning to transform, and the sight filled him with awe and a hint of fear. He leaned closer, studying it carefully, and realized that the creature's form was becoming more human, its limbs lengthening, fingers delicate but strong. Its face, still faintly alien, now showed familiar features, eyes, nose, and lips that could belong to a human child. Yet there was something otherworldly about it, a sense of timeless wisdom that made Robert's chest tighten with wonder. The humming it had made earlier now rose in tone, a melodic sound that resonated in the clearing, almost like a song of freedom, and Robert could feel it vibrating through the ground beneath him. The transformation continued, and the creature took its first full step toward him, standing taller now, its glowing skin dimming slightly in the soft moonlight, its eyes locked with Robert's. And for a moment, he felt as if he could see into its mind, understanding its thoughts, its memories, the centuries it had spent trapped beneath the crypt, and the relief at finally being free. A rush of emotions overwhelmed him. Fear, awe, excitement, and a deep, protective instinct that he could not explain. Suddenly, the creature raised its hands, and the air around them seemed to shift, a subtle energy pulsing outward, brushing against the trees and leaves, making the clearing feel alive. Robert felt a warmth spread through him, unlike anything he had experienced before, and he understood instinctively that this being was not only alive but extraordinary, perhaps the last of its kind, a guardian of something ancient and sacred. Its presence was commanding, yet gentle, and he felt humbled, realizing that he was witnessing a secret of the world few could ever imagine. As the transformation completed, the creature looked fully human, yet its aura remained unmistakably otherworldly. Its glowing veins had faded into faint traces of light along its skin, and its posture was regal, yet approachable. The groaning from the crypt was now gone, replaced by a soft silence, as if the earth itself had paused to observe this moment. Robert stepped closer, and the being extended a hand toward him, a gesture of trust and gratitude. His own hand trembled as he accepted it, and the connection was immediate, a bond formed in fear, wonder, and shared understanding. In the distance, the shadows of the crypt seemed to stir slightly, as if acknowledging the creature's emergence. Robert realized that it had not only escaped its confinement, but had also fulfilled some ancient purpose, stepping into a world that it had been waiting to see, and he had been the one to guide it there. The experience left him pale, heart racing, and mind spinning with questions about life, history, and the hidden mysteries of the earth. He knew that the crypt had chosen him for this moment, and the being had trusted him in return, creating a connection that would last a lifetime. As the night deepened, Robert and the creature stood together in the clearing, gazing at the moon and stars above. The creature spoke, not in words, but in images and emotions, showing him glimpses of its long confinement, the guardians who had once protected it, and the purpose it held in the world above. Robert listened intently, feeling both the weight of history and the gift of revelation. The groaning that had started this journey was now replaced with harmony, a sense of peace, and the promise of a future yet to unfold. Robert realized that his life had changed forever. He had come seeking artifacts, stories, and curiosities, but he had found something far greater, a living secret, a being of mystery and light, and a lesson about courage, empathy, and the unknown wonders hidden beneath the world. The moonlight touched the creature's face, now fully transformed, and Robert, pale with awe, understood that some secrets of the past are alive, and some discoveries demand respect, reverence, and protection.